Hello and welcome back to the virtual classroom for BUSI 1071, the business of real estate. We are still in week 1. At this point, you should have reviewed the professor and course introductory video, introduction to me as your professor and the course content itself. And remember, I may not always be the actual professor delivering your course in FOL, but me, Mike Sloan, and you may call me Mike in emails and salutations, I'm the one who's going to be delivering the course in the virtual classroom. And for the most part, because I am the course master, I'll probably be teaching most of the sections. So welcome back to the virtual classroom. We are still in week 1. This will be our first content-based set of lecture notes. And just a couple quick things at the beginning here while I'm sitting on this slide, just a few quick notes. So just listen to the audio. Number 1, you'll no longer see my face in the corner of this screen for any of the newer lecture videos I'm going to be doing. And that is because a few of the students complained that the vocals, the audio wasn't syncing up the way my face in the little video icon in the lower right corner was actually speaking, wasn't syncing up with the audio in the video. And I agree that is a bit annoying. I wanted to make this course very personal, and I'm going to leave myself in a few of the videos at the beginning of the course, especially that introductory one. But I am redoing these week 1 notes because I do find it is a bit distracting. So mainly, as I'm going through these notes, just to give you an idea of how this will work, the other thing I wanted to mention is these videos where I'm covering lecture notes on YouTube specifically for the online course will typically be shorter than the ones when I record them for the online course live in the classroom. Sometimes I will be doing that so that my online students can actually hear the engagement. So when I'm doing them direct with the slide deck, it might come off as a bit dry. The audio is the main thing that you want to use to follow along with the notes. Don't just look at the notes. You do want to watch the videos. But they'll be a bit shorter because there'll be times when I say, pause the video, go look at this, pause the video, go look at that. I did that in my introductory video too. So having said that, and then the final thing, at this point, because we are in week 1 and you did watch the introductory video, you should have gone through the getting started material in FOL content so that you know and have a basic grasp on kind of what happens when. And as I mentioned, in terms of evaluations, these may be bumped around from semester to semester depending on late enrollment and different kind of things like that. But you should always be looking through that in any online course, whether there's video content or not. That getting started section in FOL content is the first thing you should see and go through so you know where you're going, and then always be checking the calendar and always be watching for emails from me or your professor, whoever it may be. Okay, so let's get started. This is our first official content lecture. Same set of notes for week 1 that we were using for the professor and personal introduction. So I'm going to jump down here to this slide, slide number 7, and we are going to get started right here. So again, some of these lectures will be live in my face-to-face class so that you can sort of be a little more engaged and listen to the students in a classroom talking with me back and forth. Some will be like this where I'm speaking directly to the slides. However it's done, you will be getting the same delivery as the face-to-face students would have. It's just when I speak directly to the slides and I'm not doing it live in the classroom, I'll try and keep it a bit shorter for you as you'll be engaging in the content sort of on your own as you go through the lecture. So here is one of those moments. I would like you to Google the definition of real estate right now. Okay, so Googling the definition of real estate, how close was it to what you got here from my slide, right? Because people define real estate in many different ways, and I'm just pulling up the definition myself here as I'm talking because I don't do that often. I have my own definition. Property consisting of land or buildings is what Google says in the structured result. Now, in the real estate industry, as a real estate professional, as someone interested in becoming a salesperson in real estate, which is the primary directive of this course to demonstrate to you what it would be like to have a career like that, it's a little more than that. It's more than just land or buildings, okay? It's any of the tangible assets associated with real property, okay? Land, buildings, okay, chattel reals, as people call them. So a chattel is something associated with a building, usually in commercial real estate, that would automatically kind of be assumed to go with it, but it's not attached to the building. Okay, so we often have, and same with residential, we have refrigerators, stoves, those are very often part of real estate transactions as well. So those can be considered real estate. Okay. And then leaseholds, which is what they refer them to in commercial real estate or just fixtures in residential real estate. Those are items that would be stuck to the building. There's a saying that a lot of realtors have that if you took a house and you lifted it upside down and shook it, anything that doesn't fall off is automatically included. Those would be fixtures. But things that get lumped into a real estate deal are still considered real estate. In addition to that, we have the proper sort of, not a textbook definition, but the proper definition of what real estate really is in terms of not a topic, but part of the business world. It is a bundle of rights. Okay. It's not just the property, but a bundle of rights. So that's where I think Google is missing something in a way, because they just talk about the physical aspects of what real estate would be by definition. But real estate is also a bundle of rights. In addition to that, I'm defining here what real fixture examples would be in a commercial kitchen, maybe in a house. This is another very controversial one. And I'm trying to start here with just the basic definition. So a flat screen TV mount is a fixture. The TV itself, if you can lift it right off the TV mount, is not a fixture. So if you have buyers and you're a real estate salesperson and they would like to include that in an offer, you better make sure you write that in the appropriate place in the paperwork where it goes, or you can't really say anything to the seller if they just take the TV when the house sells. So all these little things and details like that, we'll get more into in the second half of the course. But because in the beginning of the course, I'm going to be very often making a reference to standard definitions and things like fixtures and what's included. I may bring this stuff up from time to time. I want to get those basic definitions out in the open right away. And a lot of these are what's going to be on your first quiz, that 10% mini test. Okay, so obviously defining real estate would be one of those things you'd want to do. Okay, want to do or be able to do in the context of the mini test. It's really just a quiz, but it's going to be a little over 30 questions, so it may be a bit more than a quiz, but that's still several weeks away. But some of these basic definitions will be on there. And that's another thing you'll find as I'm doing my first official content lecture here in video format, that whenever I'm doing these lectures, I'm a very forthcoming professor. I very often mention little things that are probably going to be on the quiz. Defining real estate would be one of the obvious ones. Here are some chattel examples. So things that are not attached to the building. Okay, appliances, window coverings. See, flat screen TV. See, I put flat screen TV mount as a fixture, flat screen TV as a chattel. Okay, now these can very often be considered part of real estate if they are officially included in an agreement to buy a piece of real estate where you would want the TVs, things like that. Real estate, by definition, is also an industry. It's a bunch of business activities associated with the tangible assets of real estate. So it's an industry. It's a business. It's like social media marketing or digital marketing. These are businesses, but social media marketing is also an activity that entrepreneurs often do upon themselves or for themselves. Selling, purchasing, and the operation of businesses that facilitate sales of real estate. So pretty obvious in a sense, but maybe the biggest one that I think a lot of people miss is that it is fundamentally a bundle of rights. It's a bunch of things packaged together, because by owning real property, you own the buildings on that property. You also own the right to access that property from a public road. You also have the right to be able to build things on that property, even if it's a vacant land. A piece of vacant land is still real estate. So, in general, it's something that you need to be able to define for me. And I mean, on top of these things, what else is real estate just in terms of this course? Think about it. And I'd probably put this on the quiz too. Like, real estate is a career choice. Real estate is, it's a profession. Okay. And the fact that I don't have that written on the screen doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an understanding of that for the 10% mini test. If I were to ask you, is real estate this, and this, and is it also a career choice? Okay. Where you can make pretty good amount of money. And we're going to get into that in the next week as well, and a little bit today at the end of the lecture. So why is everybody always talking about real estate? Even people that aren't in real estate. How big of a deal is this? I opened the course with a quote from a famous investor who said, the best investment on earth is earth. And literally speaking, over the course of history, this has been proven time and time and again to be true, where I could show you lots of companies where you could have invested in their stock, where more often than not, this has probably not been true. It is the single largest source of wealth in the entire world. Okay, not oil, not owning Facebook. I mean, maybe for Zuckerberg, that's the single, he owns more, in equity in his company than he does in real estate. But think about most people you know. Probably most of the value they have in terms of equity. So equity means what a person is worth. It doesn't mean how much money they have in the bank. But if you took everything that they were worth, what would it be worth? Over 90% of the time, I'm sure. I haven't looked at the actual stats on that, but the real estate assets that they own are going to carry the most value in terms of their personal equity. This is true across the world. It's made more money for anybody than anything else ever has. It shapes economies. This is also very true. And I'm not just talking about new home starts, but just real estate in general can define economies. When real estate crashes, you see people losing jobs. You see people affected in other ways in completely different industries that have nothing to do with real estate, because people have lost their homes in that community and they've been booted out and they're renting now and things are changing. It can shape economies. It is half the world's wealth. So the number one single largest source of wealth in the world, which is actually equal to half. And this is actually from statistics. I do reference in this course some real estate textbooks that come. This is a generally known concept, though. I'm not putting a reference in the notes because people that are in real estate usually learn this right at the beginning. Real property. So I'm going to step back on that slide really quickly. So defining real estate as the tangible assets and everything involved in real estate, real property is like the land or building part of real estate. Okay, so that's where you're specifically defining. So when I look up real estate on Google, their definition of real estate is really closer to the real property part of real estate, because just the term real estate can mean the real property part of it, individual items that are included with that real property that are chattels. It can mean the industry itself. It can also mean the profession itself, which, even though I don't have that on these notes back here, it still falls into this second bullet. Okay, so the real property is the tangible asset part of it. So while I want you to understand the scope and scale, just the massive size that real estate actually is as an industry, as land, the real property part of it is the part where all the wealth is. Lots of people become licensed salespeople in the real estate industry, and they don't make that much money. And that's going to be a large part of what this course is going to teach you, is why that happens and what you can do to avoid that. So real property is the land part. That's where all the wealth is. Land, buildings, real estate brokerage. Okay. This is another term that will come up a bunch in this course. And I have this set up here. So I would like you guys now, because you should be using these notes, which are always available in FOL to accompany any lecture that we do have in video format. Sometimes there might even be notes without a video lecture. Click on that and it will take you to the link that describes that, which I already have opened up here, which is right here. Okay. So you cannot get a license to sell real estate in the province of Ontario. And it's the same in most provinces in Canada. I believe there's some funny stuff going on up north in some of those territories where you can operate without a brokerage as long as you are licensed and working with the Canadian Real Estate Association. But any province, well, all the provinces, because they all have some reasonable amount of population somewhere, they all have their own regulatory body that deals with the licensing of realtors and how they become real estate salespeople and brokers then, which is the next level up from being a salesperson. You would become a broker. You have to be working for an official real estate brokerage. So go to this page now and read this stuff. Pause the video and give it a read. So this is something I would spend more time talking about in my live lecture instead of making the students read it in front of me. But my online students, give this a quick read. It'll take you about 4 or 5 minutes, and then unpause the video and come right back to me. Okay, so as you can see, this brokerage thing is kind of a big deal because once you get licensed as a salesperson, you cannot operate unless you are affiliated with a brokerage. You need to be working as an independent contractor, which technically any brokerage is going to hire you. Whether you're going to sell anything or not, you actually are going to pay this brokerage to work for them. Because the thing about a brokerage is the brokerage is the entity that has this big trust account in a bank account where funds can be safely stored there. When you're buying real estate, there's always deposits and stuff, and the brokerage handles that. You can't just you can start your own trust account, but not a real estate brokerage trust account unless you have a brokerage license, you've taken the course to be a broker of record, and you've started your own brokerage. So you have to have a physical office. You have to have a certain amount of money. There's all these weird requirements. I'm not going to get into those specifically in this class. We will definitely get into the requirements of what it takes to become a salesperson. But once you become one, you have to work for a brokerage. So you have to go out and pick a brokerage. And that's one of those important things that you need to do when you're becoming a realtor. So I talked a lot in my personal introduction about how all of my paths in life heavily contributed to me being a fairly successful realtor, especially one whose primary job is actually not real estate. And don't believe all these people that say you can't do real estate part-time. I do. I have just been very focused on a specific niche, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about in week 2. But I had to go out and pick a brokerage. So what did I have? And this will, you know what, I'll probably ask you about something like this on the quiz too, because I want to know that people watch my personal introduction. So what did I have in my personal introduction that was really important, that contributes to me being a successful realtor? Me working at Fanshawe, for sure, makes me a better realtor. I don't bring my real estate business into the college, other than in this course where I'm going to talk about it a lot, but I'm not marketing myself as Fanshawe's realtor. I would never do that. That's a conflict of interest, and Fanshawe is my number one job. But that has helped me, especially due to my digital marketing skills that have improved as a result of me being at the college. I got a digital marketing degree. Running that surf shop played a large role. It brought in tons of leads. I learned how to run a business. I learned how to be an entrepreneur. Being in the band helped me be a real estate, helped me get into real estate sales. It made it better. But when it came time to choose the real estate brokerage, that had nothing to do with the different stages in my career life prior to becoming a realtor. As becoming a realtor, that would just be something you do after you decide you're going to become a realtor. So this course is going to be more about all the things you can think about and consider on your way to starting a career as a real estate salesperson, which is why we won't over discuss or talk about choosing the right brokerage. But we will get into this a little more in the course, and you do need to understand that the real estate brokerage is a corporation, an entity that has a brokerage trust account, tons of insurance to keep you covered, that can take in salespeople who are not brokers themselves and support them, okay, and facilitate their ability to legally trade real estate for buyers and sellers in Ontario. And it's the same in almost every other province except for maybe a few territories. And it's very similar as well in the States, although in the States it's a little bit easier to go off on your own. But we're not talking about the States here. We're learning about what it would be like to become a realtor or a licensed real estate salesperson in Ontario. Okay. If you do that, you have to be with the brokerage. Okay. And we'll get more into that later, but that's what a real estate brokerage is. Okay. Back to the slides quickly, and I'll probably just leave them up in, no, let's keep going. We don't have to put them in partial screen format. So perfect segue into discussing this term realtor versus salesperson versus I'm a real estate agent versus I'm with my agency. And this, so people do not understand these terms. And without even going to Google or doing this, I want you guys to pay very close attention to my audio here. I'm going to explain this. Well, I'm going to jump to one place. We're going to start with realtor. Some of you might have noticed at the bottom of the course outline, near the bottom, it would be in that extra information section. whenever or wherever or whenever using this course material, the trademarks Realtor, Realtors, and the Realtor logo, which I don't actually use in the course material, I'll just make a reference to the word Realtor, are controlled by the Canadian Real Estate Association and identify real estate professionals who are members of CREA. And there's a different association in the States that controls that. That'll be in our notes later on. There's all these different organizations that are monitoring and regulating real estate. Now, why does this happen? Okay. And we're going to talk about the use of the term in a second, but we have these organizations. So the Canadian Real Estate Association and the Ontario Real Estate Association. Okay. And I have the AREA homepage listed here. You can go check out CREA's page, the Canadian Real Estate Association. I might ask you about those on the quizzes, what those acronyms stand for. Those will be very easy questions. I mean, you are going to be taking this. I keep referring to it as a quiz because the first mini test is an FOL quiz, but it's weighted as a small test because it does have a fair amount of questions and it covers the entire first 3 weeks of the course. So I'll ask you about what these acronyms stand for, which should be gimme questions as long as you've gone through the notes. AREA is the Ontario Real Estate Association. They regulate and control and handle all the continuing education in Ontario. They deal pretty much with all the education because they've prepared all the courses and put together all the materials. Then there's the Canadian Real Estate Association, which I will pull up as well. If I search that in Ontario, I'm sure it'll come right up. They're the regulatory body for the entire country. And some commercial realtors are members of both the Ontario Association and CREA. They regulate all the paperwork and stuff like that, but I'm not actually a paid member of CREA. So if you look at that language there, it's funny. Technically speaking, I shouldn't be referring to myself as a licensed realtor unless I'm a member of the Canadian Real Estate Association. It's the same way in the States with their association. So having said that, the vast majority of licensed salespeople, which is what we are licensed salespersons, licensed salespeople, or independent contractors in sales for the real estate brokerage who employs us as an independent contractor. Without paying to be a member of CREA, I shouldn't really be referring to myself as a realtor. I'm doing hand quotes right now. And I just wanted to make sure you understood the legal ramifications of that. So if I put this in print on my website and say, I'm a realtor, and then I don't have a little disclosure down there at the bottom that I'm actually a paid member of CREA, and that's why I'm allowed to use that term, I will get contacted by the Ontario Real Estate Association, or actually the regulatory body in Ontario, which is RECO. And RECO is a little bit different. They're like monitoring the following of all the rules. So the Real Estate Council of Ontario. So they work a lot hand in hand with AREA, and the Real Estate Council of Ontario is where I go in and I sign up for the continuing education programs that AREA handles. I do all that kind of stuff. So there's all these different things you're going to have to be a part of when you become a realtor. And of course, there's fees associated with all this. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that using the term realtor, and I will constantly in the course say, becoming a realtor, you're going to be a licensed realtor, because it's the quickest way to say licensed real estate salesperson. Legally speaking, you are not technically allowed to call yourself a realtor unless you pay that little extra fee and become a member of CREA and do the same thing in the States with their organization. So it's kind of funny the way that works, but that's how it works when things are trademarked, and realtor is a trademark term. Okay, so in terms of legalities and what things mean in Ontario, to refer to yourself as a real estate agent is actually completely incorrect. And this has been the commonly misused term in Canadian real estate because of how we define an agency relationship for a long time. When you are a real estate salesperson, okay, the agent in a relationship, if you sign somebody up for a listing that goes through your brokerage, that is the agent, is the brokerage, okay? The agency relationship, which is the contractual agreement between you and a client, whether you're selling or trying to help them buy something, whatever it may be, is always between you and the brokerage you work for. Because in the States, they have slightly different rules, to refer to yourself in certain states, if you've gone completely independent, as a real estate agent, and I'm doing hand quotes again, that's actually okay. But anyone in Ontario that refers to themselves as a real estate agent, unless they own their own brokerage and they are the brokerage, That's a completely inaccurate statement. So just at the beginning of the course, I just want to clear things up like that. So we are advising, we as me and maybe the other professors that might be teaching this in the long run, we're trying to show you what a career in real estate sales would be like. And as a first step, you would become a licensed salesperson or a licensed sales representative. That's another way it's described very often in Ontario. Both of those terms are completely acceptable. If you were to go to the RICO website, it would actually describe to you on the website the way you're allowed to use terms and what terms you're supposed to use. That's how specific the rules get. And that's the Real Estate Council of Ontario. And going through the proper licensing education to become a licensed salesperson or sales rep would be done through AREA and all the education they set up. Now, technically now, as of this year in 2019, it doesn't go directly through AREA anymore. I'll explain that in a second. But they've still created all the education. So Ontario Real Estate Association, Real Estate Council of Ontario, Canadian Real Estate Association. Okay, we know what a brokerage is. We know that we shouldn't really be using the term realtor unless in Canada, unless we are members of the Canadian Real Estate Association and already licensed salespeople. Of course, that's a given. That legally speaking, according to RICO, once we become licensed, we are licensed salespeople or licensed sales representatives. Once you become a broker, you would still be a licensed salesperson as a broker, but until you are your own brokerage, you do not call yourself a real estate agent. And the agency relationship in Ontario will always be between the real estate salesperson or realtor, if you want to keep misusing that term, and I'll do it a lot in this class because that's just, it's like the way people always called the body boards boogie boards. They were actually using the brand name of the main body board manufacturer as the name of the product category itself. We are all salespeople. Only some of us are realtors if we pay to be a member of CREA, but it's still generally acceptable informally to use it. But according to RICO, anytime you put it in print or do anything like that, it's a no-no. And then the agency relationship that we talked about. So will you be a real estate agent? No. I mean, not technically speaking, if you took the broker course, became a broker of record, started your own brokerage, and then continued to sell, because some brokerages, their brokers don't sell, some do, and then you continue to sell, then you as your own brokerage would be the agent, correct? But that's about the only example where you would refer to yourself correctly as a real estate agent. More people in the States can do that. It's just not a proper term. And to refer to yourself as a realtor, you shouldn't be doing that either unless you're a member of CREA. So we are looking at a career as real estate salespeople or real estate sales representatives. All right. So we're really getting these definitions down in the first week here just to make sure we have a good understanding. The last link you can jump over to, which I also have opened up already, and I'm not going to get into a whole big discussion about this. Let's just say that I would have loved to have seen this program land at Fanshawe College, but for one reason or another, it went to some other college that's on this screen right now that we're not going to talk about. And they're great. You know, there's a lot of great schools in Ontario. Okay. I'm at Fanshawe, so I think we're the best. And we kind of are for a lot of reasons. But so there was a competition a couple years back to see if one of the Ontario colleges was going to have the resources. I don't know how the competition worked exactly. I wasn't involved in it, but I know that Fanshawe bid on it and went for it, bid on it, however you want to say it. And it ended up going to Humber. So up until this year, any education that AREA created for the licensed salesperson program went through AREA. Now, if upon completing this one single course that you find at Fanshawe College that you want to be a realtor, the only way you're going to do that in Ontario is to go through the program at Humber, unless you've already started. Okay, if you've already started, you can continue through AREA. So and this is what the first week's all about. We're just kind of learning some basics of the industry, and this is completely mandatory. There's no point in me creating a 3-hour one-off survey course in what it would be like to have a career in the business of real estate, which is what this course is, and try and teach you everything in this real estate salesperson that literally is broken up into 6 courses, mandatory, plus some electives. It's huge textbooks, tons of stuff, All stuff you do need to learn, yes, but stuff I'm not going to teach you, because I'm trying to teach you what you're going to encounter in this career to help you decide if your personality and your lifestyle and everything match up with it, and then teach you a bunch of stuff about real estate in general along the way. Because no matter what, whatever I teach you in this 3-hour course, you're going to have to take all these classes. And it breaks down, like, here's the learning path, right? It breaks down a variety of courses in here and when you take it. So you got to take these 3. Okay, then you got to take the 4th one, and you got to pay. See, look at the hours involved. I mean, this is not just like take a test and get your license, like it is in many states and still in some provinces. And the reason for this is because Ontario real estate turned out to be such a lucrative profession for so many people that a lot of people, maybe not too qualified to be in that position, just kind of jumped in there and misrepresented people and did a poor job, made the industry look bad. And now it's not like you have to be a genius to become a realtor. You guys can all do this, okay? You're business students at Fanshawe College. You already got into this program. Believe me, you can handle the real estate courses, I should say. But you have to go through this path, and there's only one way to do it in Ontario. So I'll let you explore those links. I'm not going to beat it to death. There's the AREA site here. I'll pull up that link in a sec here. So here, this is from the education tab on the AREA website. I'll let you take a look at that as well. This kind of breaks it down, makes it a little simpler, but it does explain here. If you go, it does send you, so it talks about the course and how much they are. But if you haven't already started this, right here, the AREA is just there to guide you through the process of how you'll be educated. But they now have a provider. It's hosted by the Real Estate Council of Ontario, and the provider is Humber College. So, and before that, it was only AREA. It's not like you could take it all over the place at different places through AREA either. So it's pretty much the same thing. They're just using an established Ontario college to better facilitate the education program. But as you can see, it's not that cheap. I mean, there's a bunch of courses involved. And with the courses involved, there's a bunch of costs. Like by the end of this, once you pay for all the courses and you get into choosing a brokerage and paying the brokerage fees, and then paying the fees to be affiliated with a local real estate board, because you have to be affiliated with at least one real estate board, this is going to cost you up to $6,000 and change to become a realtor. Like if you wanted to be a mortgage broker, it'd actually only be about half that cost. But I will tell you, and this is not an argument, this is a fact, that the level of commission you're going to earn in real estate sales is much higher than being a mortgage broker. This is more week 2 stuff. We'll get into that in week 2. I'm just giving you a bit of a preview. There is just a whole ton of stuff you learned on that slide. But if you've gone through some of these resources and stuff like that, you should be fine on the upcoming mini test. Okay, so real estate is a multifaceted profession. There are many avenues you can take as a real estate professional. You don't have to be in sales. You could be an appraiser. You could focus on commercial instead of residential. So look at, and this is just as a professional in the business, off the top of my head, and better than most textbooks would provide, some of the many areas you can end up in as, someone studying real estate. You don't have to go through the commercial or residential courses. You could end up just being specialized in that and buying properties for yourself, be a property manager. Just generally speaking, real estate in itself is a business, okay? And without having a real estate license, and without even using realtors, really, if you're doing private deals, meaning no realtors are involved, it is legally fine for you to approach somebody, make an offer to buy their house, and then a lawyer would generally need to be involved. Lawyers are always involved in transactions in real estate in Ontario. At this point, you can't even do it without a lawyer. You can have a business just owning properties without being a licensed realtor. Okay, you could be on the rental lease side of things. You could be more in the investment or development side of things. And again, you can do a lot of this without getting a real estate salesperson's license. But you need to have a good understanding of the general market around you in real estate if you want to do these things, especially if you want to be an appraiser. There's lots of people that become very skilled at making houses look great, showing the best of a house. And this could lead to a career in home staging. There are lots of people that specifically work with realtors as professional marketers. They don't have the real estate license. They're just really good at social media marketing, photographers, videographers. I have all this stuff hired out. I used to do it myself, but real estate picked up and got busier. So now it's worth it for me to pay money for people to do that for me so that I can keep selling and then focus on my job at Fanshawe at the same time. Can you specialize in more than one area? For sure. And we'll get more into this in week 2. So week 2 is going to be all about like sort of envisioning your career in real estate, what parts of your life might contribute to it, things like that. But there's all sorts of, little compartments in the real estate industry where you can focus and work in. How much money do realtors really make? And we'll talk more about this in week 2 as well, but we're going to just get into an introduction here. Everybody's always saying, oh, realtors don't even make 30 grand a year. Is that really true? I want you to pause the video and Google it right now. Okay, thank you for doing that. So as you know now, it's well over 100 grand because the research done by if you Googled it, it will come up as a structured listing. And I did look at that webpage and the research did indicate that it's excluding people that have gone and got the real estate license but never sold a thing. They shouldn't count, right? Because they're obviously not active real estate salespeople. Okay, here, if you start including those people in Ontario, there's tons and tons of them. Maybe it would be down at 30,000, but the average realtor or real estate salesperson who is active in this province, the average income is it's like 111. It's always kind of fluctuating, but it's over 100,000. I mean, that's pretty good. Okay, so as you're making this money, because you have to work for a brokerage, and again, these are all just kind of previews. We do talk about more in commission. We get more into commission in week 2, and then I'll give you we'll kind of get into the math of it more even in week 11. Your real estate commission, you don't ever get it all. I mean, well, you're never going to get it all because you're going to have to pay tax on it. You're going to be a self-employed entrepreneur. Okay, that's what as an independent contractor working for a real estate brokerage, you are self-employed according to the government for taxes. So when you earn real estate commission, you just fill out your taxes as if you were running a business. Keep in mind, when you're self-employed, this makes it harder to get a mortgage. You're taking some risks by going into a self-employed industry, but you're also taking some chances at way bigger rewards because of the level of commission. So commission can be anywhere from 1% for one realtor up to 5 or 6% split between 2 realtors. And then as you're going down from the 5 or 6 all the way down to the 1, split in different ways depending on how the listing licensed realtor, licensed salesperson set it up with the seller. Typically, in a market like London, you see 2% commission available for someone that's going to bring a buyer in and sell that house. We don't really see what the selling agent or the selling realtor has put on there, but it's very often the same, 2%, but it's been getting more competitive in recent years where I'll end up doing stuff in Grand Bend, which is the town that I focus on, where everybody's trying to get a listing, and I'll tell them, listen, I will offer to do it for 1% just on my side, but if I sell it myself, I'll get a little more than that. So there's lots of ways to structure it. Real estate commission is completely negotiable. We'll talk more about that in week 2. You can negotiate that with your sellers. The reason I'm bringing it up now is because you don't just get it all. So out of that 100 grand that they made, most of those realtors might have made somewhere between 140, even 190 or 200,000. And a big chunk of that went to the brokerage they worked for. So brokerages get a bite out of your commission in exchange for providing you services. And we'll describe the way that works more in week 2 as well. Okay, so there's real estate commission, but you're not going to get it all. Okay, and it's not like 10% or something crazy like that. But if you think about a $600,000 property, and you brought in a buyer and it wasn't a ton of work, although most of the time is, and you earned 2% on that, that's a fair amount of money. I mean, you could figure that out pretty quickly. 2% of 100 is 2 grand times 6, that's 12 grand. That's a lot of money for selling one house. And that's why I got into real estate. Other reasons influenced me to get into it as well, because I have an affinity for sales and I have the personality for that, things like that. Also more on commissions and how realtors get paid in week 2, and the licensing and becoming a realtor. So For week one, we're just kind of giving you a crash course on what everything is. Week two, we're going to get into some more details. Let's talk about the market itself. How many realtors are there? Okay. And we're not going to get more into that in week two. Let's just get it out there. Let's do Ontario, Canada, and then the California and the US, and if you can find any other stats. So this is one of those moments in the video, again, where I'm going to ask you to pause and just look those items up. Okay. Okay. So how'd we do? And I just went to check to make sure nothing's changed too much from last time I looked, but it's about the same. Canada, we're approaching 250,000 with the bulk of those in Ontario. More than half of them are in Ontario, up over 50,000 just in Toronto alone. 50,000 licensed salespeople. 50. So do you think all of them are selling? Probably not, right? The larger percentage of people who get their license are not actually using it. I don't know why that always happens. I think people have this idea they're going to get into it and make a ton of money, or, sell their grandma's farm and get a huge commission, and then that'll be it. But when you look at the population, that's pretty substantial workforce. If you think of it as a company, 250,000 people working for a company, that's a lot of people. United States, over 2 million, okay, with a few 100,000 in California alone. And you don't see as many. If you guys check some of your home countries, maybe elsewhere, you don't see the numbers so staggering in other countries. And this is because the way it's regulated is not the same. And people can sort of just get into it and start selling it. And there is no licensing requirements in a lot of countries. So I mainly focused on this type of data with Canada and the US. And you could see that this is, there's a lot of people out there. So does that mean, there's too many realtors, I don't want to be one? Don't ever think that, okay? Do not ever think that if you're looking to get into real estate. It's not like that. It's about whether or not this is a career that suits your personality, suits where you've come from, suits the spheres of influence that you have. Like I talked about in my personal introduction, that's going to keep coming up. It's in the book you're reading right now, okay? So anybody can do it, well, to a degree, okay? I don't want to say that. Not anybody can do it, but there's the whole nature versus nurture argument that not most people are not born salespeople, but it can be learned, and a lot of people can do it. Maybe not anybody, but a lot. Okay, this is not brain surgery or rocket science. This is relationships and communicating with people and showing people that you can make them happy, that you can get them what they want, that you can make their lives easier. I mean, that's what being a licensed salesperson is all about. And that's why, because the barriers to entry are not so substantial, there are so many of them. And then people get into it and realize, I don't want to do this. Maybe it's just not for them. But then they still got lumped into those numbers because they got a license. So the failure rates, and I just checked in with the London St. Thomas Real Estate Association on this. I'm sure our guest speaker will talk about that in the upcoming weeks. Within the first year, 30% of new members in our local real estate board are no longer members. So they pay the $1,400 or whatever it is to be a member of the London St. Thomas Real Estate Board, because it's not just the brokerage, right? You have to join a brokerage, and then in order to trade real estate within a given municipality, you still, you have to be a member of a board somewhere. I guess no, legally speaking, you just have to be with the brokerage, but it'd be pretty crazy not to pay your L-Star fees and be part of the London St. Thomas Real Estate Association, because otherwise you wouldn't get a login and you wouldn't have access to all the data that you need as a salesperson. 30% of them are gone within the first year. They just don't pay the fees again, obviously, because they haven't sold anything. Second year, 50% of the ones that are left are gone. So if you can make it past the first 2 years, if you're making enough money to make a living, you're getting somewhere. And usually the first couple years are kind of tough, unless you happen to be one of those people that just stepped into a situation in real estate where there was a bunch of leads waiting for you the moment you walked in there. And we will get more into this in later. Remember, this is the first lecture, so I'm trying to give you guys a taste of what we're going to talk about. More on that in week 2, and more on that throughout the course, actually, I should say. Who can do it? Are you sales oriented? Are you committed to something? Do you have some basic marketing skills? Business and math skills? Okay, please, if you're in marketing, my marketing students, please stop telling me you got into marketing because you don't want to do any math. That is completely and wholly wrong, okay? You're going to have to probably do more math if you end up in sales and marketing. Plus, you need to understand a little bit about yourself. You need to know your strengths and weaknesses. And that doesn't mean if you have weaknesses, you can't be a licensed salesperson in real estate. It means you need to know where to put yourself and what to focus on. Really, really important, because what we're talking about here at the end of the day in this course, what we're looking at surveying is what it would be like to have a career in commission sales. So a lot of the things you're going to learn, you could apply to being in sales and pharmaceuticals, selling cars, selling custom products that your family business makes, to business even, not just entrepreneur to consumer. You can apply a lot of the things we're going to learn here. So that leads right into your 3% week one activity, and there are specific instructions for that in FOL. So go ahead, check that out, get it done when you can. As always, with an online course, there'll be a pretty substantial window opened up to complete each of these assignments once the instructions are revealed, and you should have no issue there. If you have any questions, email me or whoever your professor may be. And just as a culminating kind of thing, and this is also linked in the main FOL content, go take a look at what some of these top realtors look like. Wow, look how many windows I always have open in a lecture. This is top agents in 2019. And they're tracking people already through the current year. And these guys, look how young he is. And they talk about in these profiles what these people are like and some of the things they did to end up where they ended up. And these people at the top, like that small select group of people at the top, they're making most of the money in real estate. Am I on there? No, heck no. My primary directive is teaching. That's what I love to do. I also love real estate, but not as much as I love teaching. And I'm at the top in my brokerage because of the skill set I have and the way I've sort of perfected this niche market type of business that I have. Even to the point where it falls heavier within the times of year when my job at Fanshawe isn't as heavy. I'm extremely lucky to have that. But hey, guess what? I'm teaching you this course so I can give you some tips on how you might be able to create the same thing. So just something I wanted to throw in there at the end, and some light reading for you guys that you would never be tested on. Certain things like that I just put in there. Next week's lecture, we will be talking about, hang on. There, that's better. Sorry, the refresh rate on the slides. Sometimes when I'm recording, it does that. It was showing the content from the previous slide, but the top of the next slide. Next week's lecture, we'll be talking about you in the context of a career in real estate. So how do the things in your life contribute positively or negatively to you being in real estate? How does location matter? How does choosing a location matter? What it would be like for you to become licensed, and whether that cost is too daunting. So all kinds of things like that. We're going to get into way more details. Then one more week of lecturing, and you will have your mini test. So follow along with these notes. Everything will be in FOL on a weekly basis.